Having looked at the first portion, the first step in the communication process with respect to a business presentation, now we are going to move into the second phase, the second stage of the communication process. And we're going to start talking about organizing the process, organizing the presentation, and figuring out the best way to present the material. So we're gathering the material together, we're organizing it, we're doing drafts of our presentation, so we're getting ready for the actual beginning of the presentation creation. Now, the Jesuits always had a motto at their schools that repetition was the mother of education. Well, in some way, repetition is the mother of oral communication and business presentations, because you want to start off by telling your audience where you want to take them. You want to take them there, and then you want to conclude by telling them where you've taken them. So that you want to basically lay out what you're going to tell them, and then repeat back to them what you've told them. Those are the introduction, the body, and the conclusion of your presentation. Your introduction in your business presentation is when you hook in the audience. You want the audience to be connected, and you want the audience to want more. You want to captivate the audience's attention, and you want to get them involved in your topic. This is what the introduction is all about. It's like when we talked about the proposal, where you wanted to give a hook to sort of bring in the receiver of the proposal. Well, that's what the introduction to your business presentation is going to be like. You want to have a hook. You want to reel the audience in, and you want to keep them there. You want to, as we did with the proposals, you want to identify your expertise, identify yourself, and build your credibility. Build your credibility with the audience. If you don't build credibility with the audience, no matter how magnificent your presentation might be technically, the audience is probably not going to take much from it, because they do not believe the speaker to be credible. And in the introduction, as we just mentioned, you want to preview your main points. You want to tell your audience where you are going to take them. Now, how do you go about trying to capture the attention of your audience? You're looking again for that hook, something to bring your audience in. And you can do it in any one of a number of ways. You could do it through a promise. You could do it through some sort of moving story. Bring them along dramatically. You could do some type of demonstration. Get the audience involved. You could use props. You could show samples if you're talking about some type of product or some type of device. You can use a sample. You can use a relevant and appropriate quote. You can ask a question that you'll lead the audience to develop the answer to the question during the course of the presentation. You can build that connection with the audience through your eye contact. You want to maintain eye contact with your audience. For me, I always pick out a couple of people in the audience, and I try to maintain eye contact with them throughout the course of the presentation. Now, I try to pick people in different parts of the room. It's hard to maintain eye contact with a whole room full of people, so it's much easier if you maintain eye contact with a couple of select individuals. It's an actor's trick too. Often actors will do that, particularly stage actors. When they are looking out into an audience, they may find one or two people that they to whom they deliver their act, their soliloquy, their monologue. That they're the ones to whom they give their performance. You can capture the audience's attention with visuals. You can you should definitely capture their attention with your attire. Not that you should wear the flashiest, most attention grabbing clothes, but you need to look extremely professional. You need to look as good as the best dressed person in that audience. So you need to make sure that you know what is the dress code for the presentation that you'll be giving, and then you have to be at the top end of that dress code to show your professionalism by and your credibility by the clothes that you wear. You might want to share some statistics, some startling statistics. But the number one thing that you want to do is you want to build self-interest in the audience. Remember, we talked about this concept from the very beginning when we were talking about the basis of the communication process. What's in it for me? That's what your audience is thinking. And that's what your job is to do as a presenter of a business presentation. You need to show and make it clear to the audience what's in it for them. What is the benefit to them? Now, we've talked about after you've captured the audience's attention, that you need to build and maintain credibility. There are a couple of tricks that you can do to build and maintain your credibility with the audience. Number one is you can describe your special qualifications, your position, your knowledge, your experience. It's not a time for boasting and bragging. It's not a time for talking about academic awards you might have won, but it's time to share what makes you an expert in this particular topic, and why should your audience pay attention to what you say about this particular topic. Again, another way to build credibility is to dress professionally, and again, to maintain eye contact. If you can maintain eye contact, it sends a signal to the audience that what you're saying you believe in. If you didn't believe in it, you wouldn't be maintaining eye contact with your audience. Eye contact, when someone is dissembling or is not really committed, it's hard for them to maintain good eye contact. And you want to build a connection with the audience. You want to figure out a way to connect with that audience, and you want to build that special type of rapport, that relationship with the audience. And we'll talk more about the topic of rapport with your audience a little bit later in the lecture. How do we structure our presentation? How do we structure the business presentation that we are going to give? Remember, we talked about 3 parts of the business presentation. We talked about the introduction, and we've now talked about the introduction. We've talked about building the audience's attention and building your credibility with the audience. We've talked about captivating the audience and hooking the audience in. All of that comes from the introduction. And we've talked about how in the introduction you tell the audience briefly where you are going to take them in the presentation. The next thing we do is we move to the body of the presentation. And the body of the presentation is where we tell the audience what it is that we want to share with the audience. Now, we have to figure out how best to structure the body, how much to put into the body, and just what's the limits of the audience's ability to take in and to appreciate and to comprehend what we're trying to say in the body of our presentation. For a 20-minute presentation, which is the average length of a business presentation. Now, your presentations are going to be a bit shorter. You're 5 to 8 minutes. The average business presentation is about 20 minutes. And the rule of thumb is that for a 20-minute business presentation, you should have anywhere from 2 to 4 main points. No more than 4 main points. When I was a student at Georgetown at law school, I would go to Mass on Sunday at the chapel, the main campus. And there was a Jesuit preacher at Georgetown at the time. His name was Walter Burghardt. He's written many books about the art of preaching. But Father Burghardt had a hard and fast rule that he never spoke about more than 3 points in his homily. And his homilies would go 20, 30 minutes. And he was making a very effective business presentation. If your business is the church, the Sunday homily is a good business presentation. But it illustrates, for that length of time, 3, 2, 3, 4 points, the maximum that you should try to cover. Otherwise, you start getting too scattered, your thoughts start going all over the place, your audience loses attention, and you can't develop the points with adequate detail and adequate attention. And that's why you stay with 2 to 4 points for a 20-minute presentation. And you should organize your presentation in a logical manner. And there are identified in your textbook about 15 different ways in which you can organize the body of your presentation. And what you choose depends on your purpose, your audience, your material. Some material will lend itself better to one form of organization than another. You need to work out the proper structure, the proper organization for the body of your presentation based on the material that you have. And then once you've gotten through the body of your material, once you have fully developed your 2, 3, or 4 main points that you want to develop in the course of your talk, you then go to the conclusion. And this is an important part of the presentation because this is what the audience will remember. This is really important because this is your opportunity to leave a lasting impression on your audience. This is where you come in with like the halo effect so that you're able to sort of bring the audience back along and you're able to close strong and win your audience's attention and convince them of the points that you're trying to make. So if you remember, we said in the introduction, we tell the audience what we want to tell them. In the body, we tell them what we want to tell them. And then in the conclusion, we summarize and remind them of what we've told them. So you summarize the main themes of your presentation in your conclusion. You then leave the audience with some specific, relevant takeaway thought, whether it's a quote, whether it's some sort of example, some short anecdote, but you want something that the audience will remember, something memorable to help the audience remember what your main point is. And then always, always include some type of segue indicating to your audience that you're finished, that this is the end of your talk, and you need to gracefully exit and gracefully conclude your presentation. So that's how you deal with the structure of the presentation. And as I mentioned earlier, throughout the presentation, what you're trying to do is you're trying to build rapport with your audience. You want to build a connection with your audience. If you are much more effective as a communicator if you are able to establish rapport with your audience, if there's a real connection between the speaker and the audience. And you can do it through imagery. You can do it through verbal signposts. You can do it through nonverbal messaging, including your posture and your attire and your eye contact and your movements throughout the course of the presentation. So you want to always remember to try to build audience rapport, because that is essential to the success of your presentation.